I'm going to record this and find a place to share it. I'm only going to share this with a group of people because most people won't give a shit, and maybe you won't either. But as some of you know, I've been trying to find DMT for a long time, and I finally found it the other day. It's a very short thing, apparently, but I've never in my life experienced anything like it. So I want to try and explain it in the best verbiage possible. It smells terrible, but then you take it, and then you take another hit, and then like you don't want to, but I trust my brother implicitly, so he tells me you're not going to want to take another hit, do it anyway. So I do. I take another hit, and then the world folds in on itself and explodes from within itself in a way that is impossible to explain. And the complex geometry you see makes fractal art look like the amazing world of Gumball compared to like the art from a Final Fantasy video game, and that it's so much infinitely more complex. It's like the level of math that you see, or that I saw anyway, in and of itself is a confusing experience, and it's just the interlude. So like, why is that math in my brain? Why is that complex math that I have no ability to understand other than as its visual representation? Why is that in our head? It's a math so far beyond anything that makes any sense. Anyway, you see this play out. And then for me, at least, the next thing was colors. And not all colors. I will say specifically purple, teal, almost like Charlotte Hornets colors, and then some green. And like a mauve, or a magenta, a purple that leads a little more to the magenta side. And a pattern that overlaid it that I only can describe as like a sweater pattern from like the 90s when I was a kid, where you'd have this almost looks like a Aztec or Mayan patterning on top of a sweater for literally no reason at all. Other than that was just the style. So then this patterning kind of comes over everything, and it's black for me, but it doesn't disrupt any of your vision of the background. And when I say background, I mean the whole world's doing this more Mobius thing where it's all at the same time that it's folding in on itself, it's also expanding upon itself. And again, that doesn't make sense. We don't work like that. Nothing works like that. But this does. And my breathing, I'm a little aware at the time that I'm kind of breathing like, because I don't smoke anything ever. So like the smoking and taking shit into my lungs. And then, and this is so hard to explain, and fuck, every time I do this, like tears immediately rush to my eye and my throat clamps up. There was a sound throughout all that too, and I can't tell you what the sound was even. I originally thought it was my brother, but then I could tell it wasn't. And then really, when I started to concentrate on the sound is when these entities appear in front of me, and they are clearly engaging in some sort of sex or some intimate act where they are now like folding in on one another, but in a loving, just beautifully loving way, and expanding upon, like folding out from one another at the same time. And if I turn to my left or my right, and I can't actually turn my head, but I mean with my mind, if I turn to my left or my right, they're there as well. And they're at no point are they aware that I'm there. Or at least, they don't appear to care. And at this point, I also realize I don't care about my breathing. And at some point, I started breathing normal. I completely unaware of it. And I only acknowledged this for a half of a split second that, oh, nothing hurts, which for me is the most insane feeling in the world. Nothing hurts. My breathing's fine. And I don't matter. Not like, boo hoo, I don't matter, I'm not important, but like, I don't matter in the most glorious sense of that word. And that, like, nothing really matters. But like your body doesn't matter, your spirit matters, whatever's happening in front of me matters. But my breathing, my pain, my toenail, the hair on my head, my brother who is, 5 feet away from me, none of that matters. What matters is this teal and magenta and purple and green entities, again with this patterning woven throughout them, in front of me, engaged in this act. And it's not lewd. I want to be very clear, like it's not lewd. It's not, you wouldn't get quote unquote horny from seeing this at all, because first off, neither of them is a male or a female. They're both. And I don't mean that to imply that they're androgynous at all. They are both beautiful creatures. And they both have feminine features, and they both occasionally have masculine features. And I mean that in that, like, occasionally you will see a breast, but you're not entirely sure what character it belongs to. Or you might see like a masculine chest, and you're not sure which of the two characters it belongs to. It just, and it doesn't matter. Like, you're not dwelling on how odd that is. That you should be able to tell. None of that matters. You don't care that that's happening, and they're everywhere, and they don't acknowledge me. And then I will say the saddest thing in the world, and it's heartbreaking, is when you start to come out of that and everything in front of you kind of dies. And not death, but it's the reverse. So the patterning disappears. They fade a little in their extreme vividness, which again, like, when I say vivid, I don't mean 4K. I mean something like 18,000K TV, because it's real, it's three-dimensional, it's every line is crisp if it should be, and not crisp if it shouldn't be. You've never seen high def like this. And then they lose their color. And then the patterning, and then they start to fade, and the only thing I'm thinking is, no, don't go, And like my brother says, they didn't go anywhere. They're fine. It's you who went away. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. And we laughed about it later. Like, if those two things are real, did they just see a really unattractive disabled man staring at them while they're having sex or something? And I hope so. Part of me hopes so. But then it just fades. And it fades slowly. And then afterwards, as I was coming down in the more like mushroomy phase of it, is what my brother calls it, I could make bubbles appear. And then like, and I don't mean like bubbles, I mean like water, droplets of water. I would see, like, if I would squint my eyes just right, I could see these droplets of water. And I say make them appear, but I only mean because I had to adjust my eyes in a certain set of ways to be able to see these droplets. And then, of course, that kind of faded out, and I could just see what I assume is a more traditional mushroomy trip, kind of hazy bubble. And in this case, I do mean like bubble wand, bubble colors, kind of that oil slick like colors. And according to Job, it was, what do you say? I think 4 minutes or something. But I would I would have, when he asked me to come out of that and said, look, you have to put $100 on how long you were under, I would have guessed conservatively 45 minutes. And I guess it was 4 minutes. I mean, in reality, it seemed like hours, but I knew hours hadn't elapsed. I knew there was no way I'd have been alone in the basement. He'd have given up a long time ago. But so I knew logically hours hadn't elapsed, even though like I assumed it felt like it. I was like, okay, I felt hours, but I know hours didn't elapse. I'm going to guess 30 to 45 minutes. And he said 4.